Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3645. Today's date is October 16, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 7:15 a.m. My stomach is like hurting a lot. I don't know why, but it just like really hurting. Okay. Should we jump into the question? Alright, yeah, let's go. Okay, the question is, what if women led most ancient civilization? Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, first of all, what is exactly is this question, and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question, and what if question are why I'm asking is because of that. What if questions are really interested way to give the answer. It's like that na ki it kind of like force you to think about that reality, and whatever the knowledge that you have, you are creating that reality. um Disclaimer, the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right, or is not exactly wrong either. It's a kind of like it kind of like a something is this thing that keep I'm just try to express my thoughts, my opinion regarding about particular subject. So be advised, don't take this information like correctly or no seriously. No, if you need any kind of like some information, you have multiple sources. I'm just try to explain my perspective and opinion. All right. Okay. So should we continue? All right. Okay. So the question is that, okay, what if the women led most of the ancient civilization? Well, I am gonna ask couple of questions to myself. Okay, yeah. Is male and female are two different person, two different species, or what? Why are we always compare that women and male are kind of like a two different species or two different things? Like, I'm not comparing, but yeah, like, okay, I'm gonna give you kind of like a simple example. Okay, yeah, what exactly women like basically is the thing that from my opinion, okay, yeah, male and female both are same thing, both are same species, and basically I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing. Okay, yeah, like we actually think that women should supposed to be very mellow or very polite or very like nice and things and that, but that is not. Okay, yeah, like as a male person can be cruel, then female person can be cruel too. As a male person can be polite, then female person can be polite too. It's not, it you cannot kind of like simply categorize regarding about which person can behave nicely according to the gender. Definitely not. Which person behave nicely or which person kind of like somebody talking to you nicely or things like that, it completely depend on that particular person, where it been, surrounding, influence and things like that. Huh, male and female kind of like a somebody introduce some sort of kind of like a simply uh, difference that like I don't know. I think that na ki in our world, male and female are kind of like a something really equal thing. We cannot portray one gender is a kind of like a really big and another gender is really wrong. Like regarding about this question, yeah, the question says that ki, what if the ancient civilization is actually led by the women? Well, if I'm trying to think about all the possibility, then probably I think that na ki like basically is this thing they can't. Okay, yeah, like it's not really they can't. It's like that na ki probably is this thing. First of all, is that ki what makes female as a female is that she can give a birth to a human being, and that is a kind of like simply one of the something really amazing thing. Okay, yeah, as a male person, I am a male person, I cannot give birth to any kind of like a human being. No, nothing really at all. A female body is kind of like a something made in a such a way that they she could kind of like a somebody create another human body. Okay, another human, as well as like basically humans babies are very fragile at early stages. Okay, yeah, it really required very intense care. If we are not providing that intense care, that human baby might not gonna survive. Like other species kind of like a something walk after they born. Okay, yeah, after they kind of like a somebody just after a couple of minutes they kind of like started walking on their leg. But as a human baby needs to be learn lot of things, and it really required very intense care. If we are not providing that intense care, that baby is automatically die and things like that. Another thing is that he like basically is this thing, the female are really good at providing care at for the babies and things like that. A female person or female doesn't really have that much strength as compared to male person has that strength. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki, if I'm thinking about all the possible result that ki a women could kind of like a something lead the ancient civilization, will it gonna possible? Well, definitely not, because at the ancient civilization, at the early stage of the human being, we need to figure it out lot of things, food, safety, and like basically we are humans and we don't really have anything at all to protect ourselves. We can't run faster, we can't walk, we don't really have a big fur to kind of like a protect from kind of like a some winter or like a desert. No, we are really vulnerable regarding about surviving in wilderness, and female are even more vulnerable to survive in wilderness because nah. Okay, so basically is this thing, it's really essential for female to take care of not only baby but as well as a human male should supposed to be take care the female, because that's what they meant for. Like that's why kind of like a human male are kind of like have a strength, have a kind of like a something, they could utilize that strength to provide the food and things and that to the female and to the babies and things like that. Like basically if I could imagine that he, instead of kind of like a male went to hunting, females are went to hunting, then what would be that reality? Then probably is this thing that ki, yeah, a male person can take care of the baby at somewhere at some time, but when the babies are actually born, a human female like as a kind of like a female should supposed to be rest for at least like a year. Like basically when she was actually pregnant, she won't be able to do any kind of like assembly all those effortly work. Okay, so in every possible scenario, a woman might kind of like a went to hunting like a male does, but she won't be able to continue at one day or another she have to kind of like give the baby as a born, and she really required intense care. She won't be able to move and things and that. So basically from every possible scenario I'm thinking that ki female are not meant for hunting, are not meant for kind of like a survive in wilderness. She meant to be kind of like a simply a protection, and she need a protection, and she need kind of like a providing protection for the babies and things like that. As a kind of like a simply as a male person really required a role that not only provide the protection but as well as food and things like that. Like unfortunately this is kind of like a simply role, that role is kind of like a simply circulate by our divine probably. Okay, yeah, it's kind of like a simply this thing, it's a part of our nature. Like basically a male person should supposed to protect the family, should supposed to provide food because he has a strength, he can do this thing. But as a female can't do this thing because she is not capable enough for that much strength. One thing, another thing is that she need to kind of like a simply like like a baby born. Okay, yeah, like a baby making process is kind of like a far more difficult than you think it is. And women should supposed to be kind of like a simply handle that process. So this kind of like a simply role is kind of like a provided by nature. So unfortunately our kind of like a simply our civilization are leads to male centric, because the people who are kind of like a went outside and bring the food and things like that, those people called as a kind of like a simply hero. And unfortunately our civilization are kind of like a leads to male centric. That's why most of the people have a kind of like a simply father's name. My name is Saurabh Hiraman Avthare. I usually put my father name behind my name. Okay, I didn't really put my mother's name. It doesn't mean that I don't really love my mother. Unfortunately I love my mother a lot than my father. Okay, yeah, but still by legal terminology I have to be use my father name, because yeah, we are human and we are male centric people. Okay, yeah. Now if I'm try to think about all the possibility and scenario that what if a woman could kind of like a simply lead the ancient civilization or kind of like a things or that, then what would be that our world? It's very hard to think about that. Okay, because if the woman is kind of like somebody doing the hefty work, then what are the male for? Okay, it is kind of like somebody very much kind of like somebody very important question. But still if I could kind of like somebody imagine that a woman would kind of like something lead the entire civilization, then what would be that civilization kind of like something? um if I'm gonna think about the early stage of the human, okay, yeah, there is no difference between male and female. Nothing really at all. Like basically in today's world we might think that the women are very mellow or very beautiful or very nice and polite and things and that. These are kind of like some adjective words, or these are kind of like some words or affirmation are came from thousands of years ago. And we actually understand what is actually meaning of polite, what is actually meaning of sorry, what is actually meaning of mellow, what is actually meaning of that and that and that. Okay, yeah. In early stage of the human life, they don't know nothing really about that stuff. They don't really know nothing really about the respects and provide nice and things and that. Like example is this thing that if I'm kind of like leading a particular civilization, okay, what kind of like chances do I have to kind of like prosperous my civilization, or kind of like simply that make sure my civilization kind of like survive for a longer period of time? What kind of like choices do I have? I have only one kind of like choices, that I should supposed to be expand my boundaries and things like that. Because when I expand my boundaries, I would have more resources, I would have more food, which kind of like a meant for survival for my kind of like a being, like a my kind of like a civilization. In my civilization, people might gonna not get hunger, they will not gonna die because of hunger, right? So it is far more essential for me to kind of like a simply expand my boundaries and things like that, because that is the only choice. At that time there is no kind of like a somebody that peace talk and kind of like a somebody diplomacy, we could kind of like a talk and live together. This concept is not even exist. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, the concept is not even exist at that time. So whoever the lead, like a male and female, what they should supposed to be do, like should they kind of like stop expanding their boundaries or not? Like basically if I'm gonna say that ki male person are kind of like a somebody very dominant, they are wanted to kind of like expand their civilization boundaries, then if the female person would lead the civilization, then what they should supposed to be do? They would kind of like somebody expand their boundaries or what? Because there is only one choice, no, there is no choice at all, there is nothing really at all that ki you should supposed to be talk and diplomacy and things and that and some. This is not even concept. War is the only one thing that they know that ki for growth and kind of like somebody improve our life and best for civilization and things like that. Right now we knew this thing that ki this is all those things is wrong and stuff like that. But if I'm kind of like a think about the kind of like somebody the old age kind of like perspective, I realize that ki this is not okay, this is definitely not okay. like a like a basically our ancient civilization are kind of like a something evolved through lot of mistakes and kind of like a trial and error and things like that. Everything that we did, something wrong something right, we learn from it. And because of this thing we are kind of like a reach in this particular world where we are kind of like a seeing buildings, cars, and kind of like simply the way that we living life is kind of like a much more better way than thousands of years ago. This is all those things actually happen is because of we are learning and stuff like that. Another thing is that ki why does female person are not meant for kind of like a somebody leader is because of that ki like I'm not kind of like a somebody try to kind of like a somebody giving any kind of like somebody gaps or things like that. I'm not kind of like a diminishing the female perspective, definitely not. Okay, yeah, a female perspective is very different. Okay, yeah, let me tell you one thing. If I'm gonna say that a female person is a very emotional person, a very emotionally connected with the human species, as a kind of like a male person are very practical, female person are very emotional. Both have their strength and both have their weaknesses too. And we need a practical information and we need emotional intelligence too. We need a both things to kind of like a somebody human civilization kind of like a survive and thrive and things like that. This is kind of like a somebody vehicle can run on both the wheel. If we kind of like a suddenly eliminate the one wheel, then our vehicle cannot run, or our vehicle is cannot like that. So if I'm gonna say this thing that ki male person are kind of like a dominant, then what if kind of like a somebody is this thing the female person is not even exist, then what is actually point like a like I don't know, like this is not like a basically I'm not kind of like prioritizing kind of like one gender to another. No, definitely not. Okay, yeah, the kind of like a something the male are kind of like a providing the value to the family, and the female person is providing the same value from her point of perspective and his point of perspective too. As a male person provide the food and protection, female person should supposed to be provide the life and kind of like a care and things like that, a nourishment. So if I'm thinking about all the possible scenario that what if kind of like a some women led civilization what it went through, then probably I don't really found any kind of like some difference. There is might be a kind of like some very difference when kind of like a male person went very aggressively and kind of like a try to conquer the everything. um if the female person lead the civilization, this might not gonna happen, but still something happened, something less happened, but it might gonna happen, because at that time war and kind of like expanding the boundaries is the only one solution to kind of like a somebody phosphorus our life and kind of like a somebody improve the life much more better way and things like that, right? So yeah, Okay, probably is this thing. By the way, in this modern world, um, the we are living in this I'm actually living in free country. Okay, I'm living in India, and we have equal rights, not only as a male, female, but as well as kind of like assembly every category of the people. We have kind of like assembly equal rights regarding about how do we supposed to be live the life we actually decided by our own, and which is really good thing. Okay, yeah. Another stuff that I'm trying to tell you is this thing that key um we need both as a male and female. Okay, yeah. It's not really that ki probably is this thing we just rely on kind of like assembly male and things like that. Why am I saying this thing? Our civilization are a kind of like a led by kind of like assembly male centric. Okay, yeah. Is because of that ki usually we are human and we are always kind of like a admire such a people who are kind of like assembly have a less exposure. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing when we are kind of like a living our life, the mother that we are kind of like a somebody expose a lot. So when we are kind of like a somebody expose a lot of such a figure, then we would kind of like a somebody care them less. But the father is a kind of like a somebody person that expose very less. So when we are kind of like a somebody having very less connection with our father, then unintentionally as a human are admire more such a person who has a kind of like a something less exposure or less kind of like a something interaction we have. Okay, yeah. So this is what it is like basically your father is actually providing the food, so that's why our civilization thinks that ki a father is a very great person, so that's why our kind of like a civilization kind of like called as a male centric civilization and things like that. Okay, yeah. But for if I'm kind of like simply think about every possible scenario, then probably is this thing that ki for making better life, whatever the male person did, female person did the same value too. Like a providing care, giving the birth to the human and things like that. It is far more essential for yeah. So it's a kind of like a somebody is this thing that are two things that's very essential. It's a kind of like a something a vehicle cannot run by two wheels. That is what exactly is it. A male and female contributions are really much essential for improving the life and things like that. Okay, yeah. If the kind of like a female kind of like a lead the civilization, what would be that? Probably we might have kind of like a utilize our mother's name. Okay, yeah. Like my mother name is a Karuna Authare. So I might gonna use like a not Karuna Authare, like my mother's name is a Karuna Vaidya. Okay, yeah. So I might gonna utilize my name as a Saurabh Karuna Vaidya. Okay, yeah. But still, like a female centric and things like that. But still, I don't know, bro. It's something that needs a very vague perspective. Okay, and right now I don't really have any kind of like a simply I don't know, my mind is kind of like a really fucked up because my stomach is actually really hurting a lot and I don't know. Okay, so this is what my opinion regarding about this concept. Also, the information that I'm trying to tell you or the information that I tell in this artifact is not exactly right. Is not exactly wrong either. Be advised, and if you need any kind of like a prior information or valid information, go to the internet. You have multiple sources. Don't believe that. I'm just kind of like simply providing my opinion. All right, this is it. This is it, and thank you.